What are the hardest types of motorcycles to ride, everybody? That's what we're going to be finding out today on the awesome Kawasaki ZH2. And for that matter, how difficult is it to ride this motorcycle? Well, let's jump on and let's find out. When it comes to riding motorcycles, everyone, I think the most neutral riding position is probably going to be the easiest type of bike to ride. And this Kawasaki ZH2 here has a very neutral riding position. It's got a slight lean forward, but it's really, I mean, if you look at slide-on photos of me riding the ZH2, you'll see that it's not leaning forward whatsoever. There's no reach to the handlebars. The foot pegs are nice and low. So yeah, motorcycles like these, you could make the argument, are the easiest to ride. However, when you look at a motorcycle and the amount of power that it has, well, that is also something else to consider. A motorcycle that is taller as well is probably going to be a little bit harder to ride, at least for a beginner. So we are going to be focusing today's video mostly on beginner type motorcycles that, well, the ones that are the easiest to ride, and then we'll move on to the ones that are the hardest to ride. So the easiest motorcycles to ride, you'll actually find that most 125cc motorcycles or beginner bikes are all of those things. They are a neutral riding position or fairly neutral riding position. The power delivery is predictable and quite easy to figure out. It's not one of those things that where you get like all or nothing kind of power that you do with a lot of these bigger motorcycles. And you know, suspension is very forgiving, and the tires and everything all very forgiving. Everything is forgiving. Everything is meant for the beginner to get the hang of it, get the hang of riding motorcycles. And then once you get used to it a little bit, that's when you're going to start exploring how many different types of motorcycles there are out there, because there are loads. There's loads of different types. I mean, you can check out when the wife and I did our podcast on all the different types of motorcycles, and we explain what they are and, well, what to expect really when you're getting onto a motorcycle like that. But yeah, if you want to know all the types of motorcycles, then definitely go and check out that video. But most beginner motorcycles are very beginner friendly. Now, if you are in the United States or other parts of the world where you don't have to start on a beginner motorcycle to get involved in riding bikes, and you can pretty much ride anything you like, up to and including bikes like the H2 here, well, this is where things are going to get a little bit stickier for you, because when I was doing some research on this subject earlier today, I found out, and this is not from me, and I'm not sure exactly where this article got its information from, but supposedly super sports and sport bikes are the hardest motorcycles to ride. And I'm not too sure why they think that is the case, because I mean, they make the case that these kinds of motorcycles are the fastest and all that kind of stuff, so you know, it encourages the rider to go faster. It's almost like as if they kind of make it out like if you buy a super sport, you're going to find it very, very difficult. And to be honest with you, riding a super sports is fine. They're not all that hard, and you don't really have to change your riding habits all that much. The only real difference between, say, a bike like this and like the Ninja H2 is simply how the power is being delivered. That's it. With super sports, I mean, the H2, to be fair, the Ninja H2 is a bit different in the sense that it's got power all throughout the rev range. Whereas you look at, let's keep Kawasaki for now, but you look at the ZX-10R, for example, from Kawasaki. Again, it's a super sport, it's one of their flagship motorcycles. It's basically producing no power up until you get to about 10,000 RPM. And then you get all the power. So I kind of understand from that perspective, if you were going to start on a motorcycle like that, how that would be a challenging motorcycle to ride from a beginner's point of view. But when I was riding it, I mean, yeah, okay, I've got experience riding a lot of motorcycles and what have you, but if you want to ride that bike fast, then that's going to be really, really difficult. That's where it's going to get very, very hard. If you want to ride it normally on the streets, road use, no, it's not going to be that difficult at all. It will be like riding any other motorcycle for the most part, apart from the fact that you're going to really struggle getting any kind of power out of it, because you'll be doing 100 mile an hour. Well, you'll be doing 100 mile an hour in first gear on the bikes like the ZX-10R, but you'll be doing about 70 mile an hour before you really start experiencing any of the power that the bike has to offer. Whereas motorcycles like this, the power output is very linear, and you get a lot of power to play with up to the mid-range. You get more in the top end, but you get a lot of power to play with in the mid-range, and that's what makes a motorcycle fun for street riding, in my humble opinion. I'm sure that a lot of riders would share that opinion, where it's kind of like, well, what is the point in having all that power if you can't really use any of it on everyday roads? But you know, some people, they don't care about speed limits and all that, so they will blast their way through the rev limits on these super sports, and well, I'm not going to judge you for it. I recommend that you wouldn't do that, but I'm not going to judge you for it if that's how you enjoy your motorcycles. Just be careful and know when it is safe to do, all right, where you're not going to harm yourself or anyone else around you, you know what I mean? Just yeah, keep an eye on that. But if you look at a 600 Super Sport, or maybe a motorcycle like is it a CBR like 250 double R? Is that the small bore 4 where it's 250cc but it's 4 cylinders and it redlines at like 15, 16, 17,000 RPM? A bit like the ZX4 double R from Kawasaki as well. That one also redlines ridiculously high RPMs, and that's how it generates all the power. Motorcycles like that, honestly, are quite beginner friendly. Yes, they have aggressive riding positions-ish. I was actually quite surprised at how not aggressive the ZX4R actually was when I was test riding it. It wasn't all that uncomfortable to ride, and the power output again was fairly linear, and you could rev the bike out because it's not geared that long really. It's got a big RPM limit, but it isn't. You can use the power on that bike. You can actually use all the power on that motorcycle without breaking every single speed limit. So a bike like that is hella fun. I thoroughly enjoyed riding those bikes, and also my CBR 600 RR from Honda. That was another 600 Super Sport with a rev limit of like 15,000 RPM. And that bike was also incredibly fun. And yeah, okay, topping out first gear, you're kind of doing close to 80 mile an hour. But you were able to use most of the power in the power band. And again, fairly linear as well. It really wasn't that difficult to grasp. And the 600 RR was arguably the first super sport I'd ever ridden. I'd ridden sport bikes before, but never a super sport. I mean, the difference between a super sport and a sport bike, a super sport is basically a race bike, whereas a sport bike can be anything. I don't know, like it can basically be any motorcycle with sport-like fairing, I suppose, if you want to be a bit more pedantic about it. But super sports, people do categorize super sports as sport bikes as well. So anything from like, I don't know, a Honda CBR 500R all the way up to a Fireblade, you know, bikes like that could all be considered sport bikes, even though really the Fireblade and the 600 RR are the only ones that you would consider super sports. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, the problem is with a lot of these articles is that they don't really differentiate between a super sport and any other type of motorcycle, because if you think sport bike and you just think sport bike, then no, there are lots and lots of sport bikes that are very, very easy to ride. A great example is a Ninja 650. Ninja 650, or yeah, maybe like a CBR 500R from Honda. Very, very easy motorcycles to ride. God, I don't understand why people don't use their indicators. Like, I get it, like, you can either go left or right, fine, there's no one around you, no one behind you, but people like that, you find that they don't bother indicating for a lot of things, you know, even so when it's trivial to indicate. I mean, you know, I like indicating as and when I need to, but I'll also indicate when it's absolutely necessary, and you just get the impression that these people, they won't indicate for something that's trivial, so why would they bother indicating going around a roundabout or something like that, where it is important to indicate what you're doing to drivers around you, so they know whether or not they can come onto the roundabout or what have you. I don't know. Sorry, going off on one a little bit there, but a lot of sport bikes are very easy to ride. Super sports, I would agree that you got to have some skill to ride super sports, but at the same time, I honestly don't think that they are, like, you know, I wouldn't stay away from a super sport if that's one of the first motorcycles that you're, you know, one of your first big bikes. I wouldn't stay away from it because it's going to be hard, you know. Don't think of it like that. Don't have that attitude towards it. Have more of the attitude of, like, okay, I've got a few years under my belt riding bikes, or maybe even a year riding more beginner friendly motorcycles. Now I'm going to get involved in the super sports. I'm going to get involved in those kinds of bikes, the bikes that many would consider to be difficult bikes to ride. You will actually find that because you've got that experience, yes, there's going to be a little bit of adjustment that you're going to need to do. Like, you're gonna need to, well, you're gonna realize that these bikes are quite difficult to ride comfortably. I mean, some people, to be fair, are more resilient than others when it comes to riding super sports, but that is going to be an adjustment that you will need to make, is the riding position of the bike. But you give it a couple of hours in the saddle and yeah, you will have the hang of it right away. I really don't think it's going to be too different to the experiences that you've already had. And it's funny, isn't it? Because bikes that are heavier, you'd think are harder to ride, but actually, as soon as you start moving, the bikes are incredibly easy to control and incredibly easy to ride. The only issues really that you're going to have is doing slow speed maneuvers. I mean, coming to a stop is easy on one of those bikes. Not a big deal. I suppose the length of your leg, how tall you are, might play a bit more of a role in how difficult it is to stop one of those motorcycles and keep it upright. But honestly, weight does not equal difficulty. Again, it's one of those things that you'll have to adjust to, get used to the weight of the bike, but it really isn't something that you should be worrying about. Height of a motorcycle, again, I mean, the riders out of personal choice, a lot of them are like, no, I'm not going to get an Adventure Tourer because they're just too tall. And that's fair enough. Doesn't mean they can't ride them, it's just not a motorcycle that is for them. Whereas for me, I could quite easily enjoy riding an adventure bike or Adventure Tourer, even though they're sitting a bit taller and I can't put my feet on either side of the bike, I can't tippy toes either side of the bike. To me, that doesn't really matter. I'm not that worried about things like that. But a lot of people are a bit more worried about it, or they, you know, is personal preference. You know what I mean? Where that's why they're not that interested in riding bikes like that. Not because they can't, but because they choose not to. And it'll go both ways, you guys. There'll be lots of people that thoroughly enjoy riding adventure bikes because of all that extra space. And I'll tell you what, they lean over, man. They lean so far. They lean over way more than you think they do. Again, that's another adjustment that you'll have to make if you're riding a motorcycle like that. But again, I don't think it adds to the difficulty. It's an adjustment, but it's not difficult to adjust to, in my experience. Cruiser bikes, I think cruiser bikes are fairly straightforward bikes to ride in a lot of ways, but I mean, one of the things for me that was an adjustment was how low the seat was to the ground, how low the bikes are to the ground. They sit really low, but again, just an adjustment. You get the hang of it, you get used to it, not a big deal. So honestly, I don't think that any motorcycle is too difficult to ride, and any ones that are a little bit harder or a little bit more challenging to ride, all you need to do is just a few adjustments to figure out what you need to do, and once you've adjusted, you will be absolutely fine. The only thing that you'll have to remember is the different power outputs of the bike, and make sure that if you are going to put the power down a little bit, that you do it in a safe place, as I mentioned before. But don't get overly confident on a motorcycle and think, oh, I'll use all of the rev straight away. Alright, build yourself up, especially on a super sport where the rev limit is very high, and most, if not all, the power is right at that top end RPM. Like, you're going to think to yourself, oh, what's the big deal about riding these types of bikes? They've hardly got any power at all. Once you start getting up above 10,000 RPM, that's when you realize that these bikes mean business. That's where the fun is, but that is where the challenging aspect of those bikes are also, where when it comes to how difficult they are to ride. That's where the difficulty comes from, is knowing when that power is going to kick in, and you know, knowing how harsh it's going to be, because once you get past that threshold of 10,000 RPM, you really feel it. No joke. 600s, 1000s, you'll feel that extra surge in power from those types of motorcycles, but just take it easy, right? You can go all the way to the top end of the RPMs without having a lot of throttle to get, just to build yourself up to it, and then you can start opening the throttle just little by little until you really get comfy with the feel of the bike. But yeah, I honestly don't think that these bikes are going to be any harder or any easier to ride than any others. As soon as you get the basics right, you understand the clutch control, the balancing, the counter steering, all that kind of stuff, the braking, what have you, all of that. Once you've figured out all of that and you've had some time in the saddle, I honestly don't think you're going to have any issues riding most bikes. There are going to be some bikes that are going to be a little bit less, you know, like convenient to ride, I suppose, a little bit less comfortable or whatever, but that'll be a personal choice. You know what I mean? But anyway, everybody, I think we're going to call the video there. I hope that you found this video informative, and let me know what you think down in the comment section below. What are the hardest types of motorcycles that you have ridden? You know, has there been an adjustment that you think, wow, this is really different, and I've got to make lots of adjustments to my riding habits, my riding style to accommodate this kind of bike? Well, let me know down in the comment section below. But as always, you guys, if you've enjoyed this ride out with us, then please go ahead, leave that like, hit that subscribe button down there. I'd really appreciate it. It helps these videos get pushed out to more and more people, to a wider audience. So thank you. And if you don't want to miss any more videos from us, then hit that notification bell as well. But thank you again, everybody. You take care, you ride safe. We'll catch you all in the next video. Have a good one.